The massive doors of the Galaxy Council chamber opened with a deep rumble. Hyun-Woo Kim walked through them for what he knew would be the last time. His black diplomatic uniform was perfectly pressed, and his face showed no emotion. Behind him walked Jin-A Park, her military dress showing the silver stars of a human commander. They had done this walk dozens of times over the past 3 months. Today felt different. The chamber was enormous. It stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows. Around the circular room sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Each species had their own section, with chairs and equipment made for their unique bodies. The hegemony delegation sat in massive stone chairs that looked like thrones. The Torvan representatives perched on metal spikes that would have killed any human. The Zephyrians floated in crystal bubbles filled with their home atmosphere. Hyun-Woo had memorized every detail of this room during the long months of talks. He knew which aliens looked down on humans and which ones simply ignored them. Today, he would say goodbye to all of them. "Ambassador Kim," said Vextar, the hegemony leader. His voice was deep and rough like grinding rocks. "We hope you have reconsidered your species' unreasonable demands." Hyun-Woo walked to the center of the chamber. A small platform rose from the floor to lift him up so all the aliens could see him. The platform was meant for much taller species, so he looked tiny compared to the massive beings around him. "Honored Council," Hyun-Woo began, his voice clear and steady. "Humanity comes before you today with our final proposal." He activated a hologram that showed star maps and trade routes. Blue lines connected human colonies to alien worlds. Green numbers showed the resources humanity had shared. Red markers indicated the technologies humans had given freely to other species. "We ask for equal representation in council decisions. We ask for fair access to trade routes that humans discovered. We ask for the right to defend our colonies from attack. We ask to be treated as partners, not servants." A sound like breaking glass came from the Zephyrian section. It was their version of laughter. Krixtal, their lead representative, spoke, in a voice like ringing bells. "The young species wants to play with the adults. How amusing." Kelnox of the Torvan Empire made a clicking sound with his mandibles. "Humans should be grateful we allow them to exist in our galaxy. Your species has been spacefaring for less than 200 years. We have ruled the stars for thousands." Jin-A Park's hand moved slightly toward her weapon, but Hyun-Woo gave her a small look that stopped her. He had expected this response. The council had given the same answer for 3 months. "Perhaps," said Vexitar, leaning forward in his stone throne, "humanity needs more time to understand their place. We are willing to grant you limited trading rights to 3 systems. In exchange, you will provide us with your faster-than-light communication technology and your medical research data." The offer was insulting. Humans had discovered 12 new systems in the past year alone. Their communication technology was the backbone of galactic civilization. Their medical research had saved billions of alien lives. In return, the Council offered access to 3 dead rock worlds that nobody else wanted. Hyun-Woo nodded slowly. "I understand the Council's position completely." Some of the aliens seemed pleased. They thought the humans were finally learning their place. Vextar made a satisfied rumbling sound. "However," Hyun-Woo continued, "humanity must decline this generous offer." The chamber became very quiet. Even the constant background hum of alien technology seemed to stop. "We decline all offers of limited partnership. We decline all treaties that treat humans as junior members. We decline to continue these negotiations." Jin-A Park stepped forward. Her voice was crisp and military. "All human diplomatic staff will leave council space within 7 days. All human trade agreements are hereby terminated. All human military support is withdrawn immediately." The aliens began making various sounds of surprise and anger. Vextar's voice boomed across the chamber. "You cannot simply leave! Your species needs our protection!" Hyun-Woo smiled for the first time in months. It was not a happy smile. "The Council has made it clear that humanity is not welcome as an equal partner. We respect your decision. We hope you will respect ours." From the back of the human delegation, Minho Lee quietly activated a small device. It looked like a translator, but it was actually sending a coded message to human ships throughout the galaxy. The message was simple. Operation Homecoming begins now. "This is madness," shouted Kelnox. "Your species will not survive alone." "We have survived alone before," Ginny Park replied. "We will do so again." Crixtal's crystal bubble began to glow brighter, a sign of Zephyrian anger. "You are making a terrible mistake. The galaxy is dangerous. There are pirates, raiders, hostile species that will destroy you." Hyunwoo gathered his papers and closed his briefcase. "The galaxy is indeed dangerous. We have learned much about hostile species during our time here." The insult was subtle but clear. Several aliens began talking at once, their voices mixing, into a chaos of different languages and sounds. Vextar stood up from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow over the human delegation. "If you leave the protection of the Council, you leave it forever. Do not expect to come crawling back when you realize your mistake." "We understand," Hyunwoo said. He bowed slightly, a gesture of formal politeness with no warmth in it. "May the Council find the peace and prosperity it seeks." The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. No alien tried to stop them. Most seemed too shocked to speak. As they reached the doors, Hyunwoo heard Vexatar speaking to the other council members. "Let them go. They will be back within a year, begging for our help. Then we can dictate our terms." The doors closed behind the humans with a final boom. In the corridor outside, Ginny Park spoke quietly. "Do you think they understand what they just lost?" Hyunwoo adjusted his uniform jacket. "No, but they will." Minho Lee checked his device. "All human ships have received the message. The evacuation begins immediately." As they walked through the station toward the human docking bay, other aliens stared at them. Word was already spreading that the humans had walked away from the Council. Some aliens looked confused, others seemed amused. A few looked worried, though they did not yet understand why. The human ship waiting for them was small and simple compared to the massive alien vessels, but it was fast, and it was going home. As they boarded, Hyunwoo looked back at the Council. "Station 1 last time. Goodbye," he said quietly. Then louder, so his staff could hear, "Take us home. We have work to do." The ship pulled away from the station and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, the Galaxy Council continued their meeting, already discussing how to divide human-discovered star systems among themselves. They had no idea that within 6 months they would be begging the humans to come back. They had no idea that walking away was the strongest thing humanity had ever done. The war was over. The humans had won by refusing to fight. So Young Choi stood on the observation deck of New Busan Colony and watched the ships arrive. Every day brought more vessels from Earth and the other human worlds. They came to take people home. The colony had been her life's work. 5 years. Ago, this planet was just a dead rock floating in space. Now it had breathable air, flowing rivers, and green forests. The human terraforming machines had transformed it into a beautiful world where families could build new lives. "Administrator Choi," called her assistant. "The next group of evacuees is ready for transport." So Young nodded, but did not turn away from the window. Below her, families loaded their belongings onto transport vehicles. Children played in the gardens one last time. Adults packed machines and computers with careful hands. Everything valuable was leaving. Everything human-made was going home. "How many more ships do we need?" she asked. 43 more transports for the people. 12 heavy cargo ships for the equipment. The terraforming cores will need special handling." So Young finally turned from the window. "Make sure the cores are completely removed. Every piece of human technology comes with us." On the other side of the colony, Tae Jin Han supervised the shutdown of the atmospheric processors. These massive machines had turned the planet's poisonous air into something humans could breathe. They had worked for 5 years without stopping. "Sir," one of his technicians called out, "the aliens are asking why we're removing the processors. They want to know if the machines will keep working without us." Tae Jin looked at the technician with surprise. "Did you tell them the truth?" "What truth, sir?" "The machines only work with constant human maintenance. Without us, they'll stop working in about 6 months. The atmosphere will return to its original state." The technician looked shocked. The air will become poisonous again? Yes. This planet will be uninhabitable for most species within a year. Word spread quickly among the evacuation teams. Many humans had thought the worlds they terraformed would remain beautiful gardens forever. They had not realized how much constant work was needed to maintain the changes they had made. Yoonji Song received the news while packing her medical research laboratory. As the head of human xenobiology, she had spent years developing treatments for alien diseases. Her work had saved millions of lives across dozens of species. Dr. Song, her research partner asked, "What about the Caltharian plague treatment? Should we leave some supplies for their hospitals?" Yoonji stopped packing and thought carefully. The Caltharians were a peaceful species that had always been kind to humans, but they were also loyal members of the Galaxy Council. Pack everything, she decided. All research, all medicine, all equipment. The Council wanted humans to leave. We're taking our knowledge with us. But without the treatment, the Caltharian plague will return. Millions could die. Then perhaps the Council should have thought about that before dismissing us. The decision was hard, but it was necessary. Humans had freely shared their medical advances with alien species for decades. They had received nothing in return except demands for more help and accusations of being primitive. Wu Jin Nam had an even harder job. As trade coordinator for the human colonies, he had to cancel thousands of contracts and agreements. Human factories supplied parts for alien machines. Human farms provided food for alien worlds. Human miners extracted resources that other species could not safely obtain. "The Therian delegation is here to see you," his secretary announced. Wu Jin sighed. The Therians were the fourth alien group to visit him this week. They all wanted the same thing, for humans to continue their contracts despite leaving the Council. The Therian ambassador was tall and thin with pale blue skin. Like most of his species, he moved with quick, nervous gestures. "Trade coordinator. Nam," the alien said. "Surely we can reach an agreement. The Therian reproductive cycle depends on your neural stabilizers. Without them, our species faces extinction." "I understand your concern," Wu Jin replied. "However, all human contracts with Council species are terminated. We explained this when we left the negotiations." "But this is different. This is about survival." "Yes, it is. It's about human survival in a galaxy that has made it clear we are not welcome as equals." The Therian's skin turned a darker shade of blue, indicating distress. "Please, we will pay any price. We will give you anything you want." Wu Jin stood up from his desk. 6 months ago, humans offered the Council partnership and equality. We were told we were not worthy of such treatment. Now you offer us anything. "We want. The irony is not lost on me. We made a mistake." "Yes, you did. And now you must live with the consequences." The evacuation continued for weeks. Ship after ship arrived to collect people and equipment. The aliens living on human terraformed worlds began to panic as they realized what was happening. On New Sol Colony, the local Vorthak population sent desperate messages to their homeworld. The human-built regeneration chambers that kept their long-lived species healthy were being dismantled and shipped away. On Nova Incheon, Zephyrian crystal farmers discovered that their crops were dying. The special lights that helped their crystals grow were human-designed and would stop working without replacement parts. Dongmin Park, the evacuation coordinator, received hundreds of messages from alien civilians. They begged humans to stay. They offered money, resources, even political support. But it was too late. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're getting official protests from 12 different Council species. They're demanding we leave the terraforming equipment." "In place." And our response? Ambassador Kim's orders were clear. Everything comes home. The protests grew stronger as more aliens realized what they were losing. The Council had assumed that human colonies were tiny outposts that could be easily replaced. They had not understood that human technology was woven into the fabric of galactic civilization. Young-Ho Seo, head of the technical evacuation team, had the most important job. He oversaw the removal of the quantum communication networks that connected different parts of the galaxy. These networks used human-designed protocols that allowed different alien technologies to work together. Dr. Seo, his team leader, asked, "What happens to galactic communications when we remove our equipment?" "The networks will fail sector by sector. Some areas will lose contact completely. Others will have limited, unreliable connections." "How long before total failure?" 6 to 18 months, depending on the sector. As the last human ships prepared to leave Council space, panic began to spread among alien populations. They had thought humans were a minor species that could be safely ignored. Now they realized that human innovation had become essential to their way of life. Haerin Kim, the final evacuation officer, stood in the empty command center of New Busan Colony. All the humans were gone. All the equipment was removed. Only empty buildings remained. Outside, the sky was already changing color as the atmospheric processors shut down. Soon, the beautiful blue sky would return to the sickly green of the planet's natural atmosphere. Her communicator crackled with a message from Earth. Evacuation complete. All humans have returned safely to human space. Operation Homecoming is a success. Haerin looked around the empty room one last time. Humans had built something beautiful here. They had turned a dead world into a garden. They had shared their gifts freely with aliens who repaid them with contempt. "Goodbye," she whispered to the empty colony. Then she walked to her ship and flew home. Behind her, the Galaxy Council was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the value of human friendship. Da-Yoon Kim sat in her office on Earth and read the morning reports. As Director of External Affairs, she monitored all communications between human space and the rest of the galaxy. 1 year ago, those reports had been full of trade negotiations and diplomatic meetings. Now they contained something very different, desperate pleas for help. "Ma'am," her assistant said, entering with another stack of documents, "we have 47 new requests for technical assistance. Most are marked as emergency priority." Da-Yoon picked up the first report. It was from the Hegemony's trade division. Their quantum routing systems were failing across their empire. Without these systems, cargo ships could not find their destinations. Trade was grinding to a halt. The second report came from Thyros Prime. The Therian species was facing a reproductive crisis. Without human-developed neural stabilizers, their birth rate had dropped by 60% in just 6 months. "Any word from the Council itself?" Da-Yoon asked. 3 official communications, all requesting immediate renewal of technical support contracts. None mention the previous negotiations or acknowledge any mistakes. Da-Yoon was not surprised. The Galaxy Council was too proud to admit they had been wrong about humans. They still thought this was a temporary problem that could be solved with money or threats. On Luna Station, Ji-Hoon Kong monitored galactic communications networks. The human-designed systems were failing exactly as predicted. Sectors that had enjoyed instant communication for decades were now cut off from each other. "The outer rim has gone completely dark," reported his technical staff. "No communications at all for the past 3 days. What about the core worlds? Limited contact only. Message delays of 6 to 12 hours. Several major trade routes have lost coordination entirely." Ji-Hoon pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red zones showed areas with failed communications. Yellow zones indicated degraded service. Only a few green areas still had reliable contact, and those were shrinking every day. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Torvan Military Command. They're requesting immediate assistance with their shield generators." The Torvan Empire was one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy. They had laughed at human peace proposals and suggested that humans should be grateful for any scraps the Council offered. "What's their situation?" Ji-Hoon asked. "Their entire fleet is defenseless. The shield generators were based on human designs. Without replacement parts and maintenance, they've started failing in combat. The Torvans have lost 3 major battles in the past month." Ji-Hoon almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Dr. Young-Soo Park reviewed medical reports from his research facility on Mars. Before the human exodus, he had led a team developing treatments for dozens of alien diseases. His work had been shared freely with alien hospitals across the galaxy. Now those hospitals were sending him reports of medical disasters. The Caltharian plague had returned with a vengeance. Without human-developed antibiotics, the death toll was climbing rapidly. Entire Caltharian cities were under quarantine. The Vorthak regeneration chambers were failing one by one. These chambers allowed the long-lived species to heal from injuries and extend their lifespans. Without human-made components, the Vorthak were experiencing their first widespread deaths in centuries. "Doctor," his research assistant asked, "shouldn't we help them? People are dying." Young-Soo looked at the medical reports spread across his desk. Millions of alien civilians were suffering because their governments had been too arrogant to treat humans as equals. "Send them our sympathy," he said finally. offered to resume medical aid when their governments are ready to negotiate in good faith. But the civilians had nothing to do with the Council's decisions. No, they didn't. But their governments represent them. If the aliens want human help, they need to change their government's attitudes. It was a hard decision, but Young-Soo had learned that kindness without respect was worthless. Humans had been kind to alien species for decades. In return, they had been treated as useful servants rather than valued partners. Hae-won Lee tracked refugee movements from her office in the Human Intelligence Service. The former human colonies were becoming uninhabitable as terraforming systems failed. Millions of aliens who had settled on these worlds were now homeless. The refugees are overwhelming the Council's emergency services, she reported to her superiors. They don't have enough ships to evacuate everyone, and their worlds can't support the additional population. What about the terraformed worlds themselves? New Busan's atmosphere became toxic 3 weeks ago. Nova Incheon's water systems failed last month. New Seoul is experiencing massive storms as the weather control systems shut down. The aliens had not understood what it took to maintain a terraformed world. They had thought the beautiful planets humans created would stay that way forever. Now they were learning that human technology required human expertise. On the positive side, some alien civilians were beginning to question their government's decisions. Protests had broken out on several worlds, with aliens demanding their leaders apologize to humanity and negotiate new agreements. Commander Soo-Jin Yu intercepted military communications from her position aboard a deep space monitoring station. The alien militaries were struggling with equipment failures, communication breakdowns, and resource shortages. The Zephyrian crystal cities are going dark, she reported. Their power matrices are failing without human maintenance. Some cities have lost life support entirely. Casualties? Unknown but potentially massive. The Zephyrians need very specific atmospheric conditions to survive. If their life support fails completely, entire populations could die. The situation was becoming desperate for many species. But instead of admitting their mistakes, some alien governments were considering military solutions. "Ma'am," her communications officer said, "we're detecting military buildups near human space. The hegemony has moved 3 fleets to the border. The Torvan Empire is massing ships despite their shield problems." Soo-Jin was not worried about human defenses. The human military had spent the past year preparing for exactly this situation, but she was concerned about alien desperation leading to stupid decisions. "Send a message to Earth Command. Recommend raising our alert status to yellow." Dr. In-Soo Choi, Earth's leading expert on galactic economics, published his analysis of the crisis. The galactic economy had contracted by 70% since the human exodus. Trade routes were collapsing. Industrial production was falling. Several species faced economic and social collapse within months. The aliens built their civilization on human innovations without realizing it, he explained in his report. They thought humans were just another minor species providing basic services. They didn't understand that human technology was the foundation that held everything together. The most serious problem was the breakdown of interspecies cooperation. Without human-designed communication and translation systems, different alien species were having trouble working together. Old rivalries and conflicts were returning as cooperation became difficult. Back in her Earth office, Da-Eun Kim read the latest intelligence reports. The Galaxy Council was meeting in emergency session every day now. Some members wanted to attack human space and take what they needed by force. Others argued for immediate negotiation and apology. But the Council's pride was still getting in the way of practical solutions. "Ma'am," her assistant announced, "we have an incoming transmission from the Council. It's marked as urgent." Da-Eun accepted the transmission. Vextar's massive face appeared on her screen. The alien leader looked tired and angry. "Director Kim," he said, "the hegemony is prepared to discuss renewed cooperation with humanity." "That's wonderful news," Da-Eun replied politely. "When will the formal apology be delivered?" "Apology? For treating humanity as inferior, for dismissing our reasonable requests for equality, for assuming we would accept scraps from your table." Vextar's expression darkened. "The hegemony does not apologize to lesser species. Then the hegemony will continue to watch its civilization fall apart." Da-Eun ended the transmission. Outside her window, she could see the lights of Earth's cities. Humanity was safe in their own space, building their own future. The aliens could join them as equals, or they could face the consequences of their arrogance alone. The choice was theirs. The Galaxy Council chamber looked very different than it had 18 months ago. Many seats sat empty because their representatives had died from medical crises or could not travel due to communication failures. Those who remained looked desperate and afraid. Vextar still sat in his stone throne, but he no longer looked powerful. His empire was crumbling. Trade had collapsed. Planets were going dark as power systems failed. Even his own homeworld was struggling to maintain basic services. "We must face the truth," said Zelmoth, the Caltharian representative. Her voice was weak and hollow. "We cannot survive without human assistance." Half of the Caltharian population had died from the returning plague. Their hospitals were overwhelmed. Their medical system had collapsed completely. Zelmoth herself looked sick, her normally bright yellow skin now pale and faded. "The Caltharians are not alone in their suffering," added Hrexnal of the Vorthok. "My people are dying of old age for the first time in 1,000 years. Our regeneration chambers have failed. We are becoming extinct." The Vorthak had always been proud of their long lives and their ability to heal from any injury. Now they were learning what it meant to be mortal. Their society was in chaos as death returned to their experience. Quindar, the new hegemony representative, was younger than Vexitar but no less proud. "Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgment of the humans," he admitted reluctantly. "But they cannot expect us to grovel." From her monitoring station, Commander Su-Jin Yu listened to the Council's emergency session. Human intelligence had been tracking the aliens' desperate communications for weeks. The situation was even worse than most Council members realized. "Ma'am," her intelligence officer reported, "the Zephyrian crystal cities have lost primary power. They're running on emergency reserves that will last maybe 2 weeks. Casualties? Estimated at 40% of their population. They need very specific atmospheric conditions to survive. When the life support failed, most of the civilians suffocated." The Zephyrians had always acted as if humans were barely intelligent animals. They had laughed at human emotions and dismissed human technology as primitive. Now their advanced crystal civilization was dying because they could not maintain the systems humans had built for them. "What about military movements?" Su-Jin asked. 3 different fleets are positioned near human space. The hegemony has 60 ships at the border. The Torvan Empire has massed 80 vessels despite their shield problems. Even the Zephyrians have sent their remaining functional ships. Su-Jin was not worried about the alien militaries. Human defenses had been strengthened significantly since the Exodus. More importantly, the alien fleets were barely functional. Their ships were breaking down without human maintenance and spare parts. But desperation could make enemies do stupid things. On Earth, Kyung-Ho Bae presented his analysis to the Human Defense Council. As Strategic Assessment Director, he had been tracking the alien crisis since it began. "The Galaxy Council faces complete societal breakdown within 6 months, he reported. "Several species are already functionally extinct. The survivors are fighting over remaining resources." "What's their military capability?" asked General Min-Soo Park. "Severely degraded. The Torvan shields are failing in combat. The hegemony's communications are unreliable. The Zephyrian power systems are collapsing. They could not mount an effective attack even if they tried." "But they might try anyway?" "Desperation makes people do irrational things. Some council members are arguing that a quick strike against human colonies could capture the technology they need." President Mi Young-cho leaned forward in her chair. "What's our response if they attack?" "Complete severance of all contact. If they choose violence over negotiation, they lose any chance of human assistance forever." It was a harsh policy, but necessary. Humans had offered partnership and been rejected. They had offered aid and been dismissed. They would not reward military aggression with surrender. In the council chamber, the debate continued. The aliens were finally realizing how dependent they had become on human innovation, but their pride still prevented them from admitting their mistakes. "We could offer the humans limited trade privileges," suggested Kelnox of the Torvan Empire. "Perhaps access to 5 star systems instead of 3. The suggestion was absurd. Humans had discovered dozens of star systems and could travel freely throughout their own space. They did not need the Council's permission to trade or explore. "The humans want an apology," Zelmoth said weakly. They want us to admit we were wrong. Never, Vextar's voice boomed across the chamber. The hegemony does not bow to lesser species. Then the hegemony will die, replied Rexnell bluntly. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. The argument continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to negotiate immediately. Others preferred military action. A few suggested trying to steal human technology through espionage or raids. None of them seemed to understand the real situation. Humans were no longer the desperate species seeking acceptance. They were now the only hope for galactic civilization's survival. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim received the Council's first official communication in over a year. It was a request for renewed cooperation that mentioned trade benefits and mutual assistance. It did not mention apologies or equal treatment. Same old arrogance, commented Jin-A Park. They still think they're negotiating from a position of strength. Should we respond? Asked Minho Lee. Yes, Hyunwoo decided, but not to them. Send a message to the alien civilian populations. Explain our position directly to the people suffering from their government's mistakes. The human message was broadcast on every available communication channel. It was simple and clear. Humanity was willing to help, but only as equal partners. The aliens could have human assistance, but not human submission. The broadcast caused immediate controversy. Many alien governments tried to block it, but their communication systems were too damaged to prevent the signal from getting through. For the first time, ordinary aliens heard the human side of the story. Protests broke out on dozens of worlds. Alien civilians demanded their governments negotiate with humanity immediately. They had watched their children die from preventable diseases, while their leaders refused to apologize for past insults. The civilian populations are turning against their governments, reported Haewon Lee from Human Intelligence. There have been riots on 8 council worlds. Several governments are facing rebellion. Any chance of regime change? Asked Da-Un Kim. Possible, but it could take months. And some governments might choose military action rather than face domestic uprising. The situation was becoming more dangerous as it became more desperate. Alien leaders faced a choice between admitting their mistakes or using force to try to solve their problems. Commander Sujin Yu detected the first signs of military movement 3 days later. Ma'am, the hegemony fleet is moving toward our border. 60 ships in attack formation. Status of their weapons and defenses? Weapons appear functional, but communications are sporadic. Their coordination will be poor. Are they actually planning to attack? Unknown. They might be trying to threaten us into negotiations, or they might be desperate enough to try taking our colonies by force. Sujin sent an immediate alert to all human military commands. If the aliens wanted a war, they would get one. But it would not be the easy victory they imagined. Back in the council chamber, Vexatar stood before the assembled representatives. His empire was dying, his people were suffering, but his pride was still intact. The humans think they can force us to beg, he declared. They are wrong. We will take what we need. That's suicide, protested Zelmoth. We need their cooperation, not their hatred. The Kaltharians are weak, Vextar replied. The hegemony is strong. We will remind the humans of their proper place. Quindar looked uncomfortable but did not challenge his leader. The younger hegemony representative knew their military was in poor condition, but he also knew that questioning Vextar could be fatal. As the council session ended, 3 alien fleets began moving toward human space. Their commanders had orders to capture human colonies and force humanity to resume technical support. It was the biggest mistake the Galaxy Council had ever made. On Earth, President Mi Young-cho called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. The alien attack was exactly what human strategists had predicted. If they attack us, she said, we cut all contact forever. No negotiations, no assistance, no second chances. Even if their civilians are dying? Asked one advisor. Especially then. We cannot reward aggression with aid. If we do, they'll use force against us again and again. The choice was approaching rapidly. In a few days, the Galaxy Council would learn whether their gamble would save them or destroy them completely. The alien fleets never fired a shot. 3 days into their journey toward human space, the hegemony lead ship lost power completely. The Torvan vessels found their weapons systems failing one by one. The Zephyrian ships simply stopped responding to commands as their crystal control networks collapsed. Commander Sujin Yu watched the pathetic display from her monitoring station. The hegemony flagship is drifting. No power, no communications. The Torvan formation has broken apart. Half their ships can't maintain course. Are they retreating? Asked her communications officer. They can't retreat. Most of their ships are barely functional. They're stranded. The alien fleets that had been sent to threaten humanity now needed rescue themselves. Several ships were sending distress signals as their life support systems failed. Others had lost navigation and were drifting helplessly in space. It was a perfect demonstration of how dependent the aliens had become on human technology. On Earth, President Mi Young-cho faced a difficult decision. She could leave the alien fleets to die in space, or she could authorize rescue operations. Either choice would send a message to the Galaxy Council. If we save them, they'll think we're weak, argued General Min-Soo Park. They'll try again. If we let them die, we're no better than they are, replied Humanitarian Affairs Director Soo-Jin Lee. There are thousands of alien crew members on those ships. President Cho considered both arguments carefully. Finally, she made her choice. Send rescue ships, she ordered, but only for medical emergencies. We save their lives, then send them home with a message. The human rescue operation was swift and professional. Medical teams stabilized dying alien crew members while engineering teams provided just enough assistance to get the broken ships moving again. No advanced technology was shared, and no permanent repairs were made. Each rescued alien received the same message. Humanity offers this assistance as a gesture of goodwill. We hope the Galaxy Council will remember that mercy is stronger than pride. The failed attack attempt shattered what remained of alien confidence. In the council chamber, Vextar faced angry representatives from dozens of species. "Your pride has doomed us all!" shouted Zelmoth. The Caltharian representative was dying of the plague, but she had enough strength left for anger. The humans could have left our fleets to die, but they chose mercy. What does that tell you about their character compared to ours? Vextar had no answer. His great military strike had accomplished nothing except proving how helpless the aliens had become. Quindar stood up slowly. As the younger hegemony representative, he had watched his species decline with growing horror. I formally request permission to contact the humans and arrange negotiations. You have no authority. Vextar roared. I have the authority of necessity, Quindar replied calmly. The hegemony high command has voted. You are relieved of your position. I am now the senior representative. Similar changes were happening across the council. On world after world, alien governments were falling as their populations demanded new leadership. The old, proud leaders, who had dismissed humanity, were being replaced by younger, more practical politicians. 2 weeks later, a new delegation arrived at Harmony Station in human space. The station had been built specifically for diplomatic meetings, far from both Earth and Council territory. It was smaller than the massive Council chamber, but it was neutral ground. Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim entered the meeting room with President Mi Young-cho at his side. The message was clear. This was not a minor diplomatic discussion anymore. This was a meeting between equals. The alien delegation looked very different from the proud representatives who had dismissed humanity 2 years earlier. Quindar of the hegemony was thin and tired. The new Caltharian representative, Dexhai, was visibly sick but determined. Even the Zephyrian delegate, Sil Nexus, had lost the glowing arrogance that characterized her species. President Cho, Quindar, began formally. We come before you to request renewed cooperation between our species and humanity. We're listening, the president replied. We offer generous trade agreements, access to rare minerals, favorable shipping contracts. President Cho did not smile, but Hyunwoo could see the amusement in her eyes. And in return, we need your medical assistance, our technical expertise, your manufacturing capabilities. I see. So you're offering us the chance to work for you again. Quindar's skin flushed darker, a sign of embarrassment. That's not... We don't mean... What exactly do you mean? asked Yajinko, the new head of human-alien relations. The alien delegates looked at each other uncomfortably. They had come expecting to negotiate a business deal. They were not prepared for harder questions. Finally, Dex High of the Kaltharians spoke up. Her voice was weak, but sincere. "We made a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake." The room became very quiet. "We treated humanity as servants instead of partners. We dismissed your contributions and ignored your achievements. We thought you needed us more than we needed you." She paused to cough, the plague making every word painful. "We were wrong. Completely wrong. Our arrogance has cost millions of lives." Quindar looked surprised by his colleague's honesty, but he nodded slowly. "The hegemony also acknowledges our error in judgment." One by one, the alien representatives admitted their mistakes. The proud species who had laughed at human emotions were now forced to confront the consequences of their own pride. "Words are easy to say," observed Jamin. "Oh, representing the Human Science Consortium. How do we know this isn't just desperation talking?" "You don't," admitted Silnexus of the Zephyrians. "We have to prove our sincerity through actions." President Cho leaned forward in her chair. "What actions did you have in mind?" "Equal representation for humanity in all council decisions. Veto power over any legislation affecting human interests. Formal recognition of human territorial sovereignty. Full partnership status, not junior membership." The terms were exactly what humanity had requested 2 years earlier. Back then, the aliens had laughed at these demands. Now they were offering them voluntarily. "That's a good start," said Captain Sungwoo Han, commander of the human fleet stationed nearby. "But there's still the matter of reparations." "Reparations?" "For the lives lost due to your refusal to continue medical cooperation. For the civilians who died when terraformed worlds became uninhabitable. For the economic damage caused by your pride." The alien delegates looked stricken. They had not considered the human cost of their decisions. "We don't have the resources to pay significant reparations," Quindar admitted. "Our economies have collapsed." "Then you'll work them off," replied Captain Han. "Your species will provide labor and materials for human projects until the debt is paid." It was a harsh term, but fair. The aliens had caused the crisis through their arrogance. They would help solve it through their effort. "There's one more requirement," added President Cho. "A public apology. Not to the human government, but to all human civilians who suffered because of council decisions." "A public apology?" Quindar looked uncomfortable. "Broadcast across the galaxy. A formal acknowledgement that humanity deserves equal treatment and respect." The alien delegates discussed this quietly among themselves. For proud species like the hegemony and the Zephyrians, public apology was humiliating. But their alternatives were extinction or continued suffering. "We agree," Dex High said finally. "On behalf of the Kaltharian Republic, I formally apologize to humanity for our arrogant and foolish behavior. We ask for forgiveness and the chance to build a true partnership." Her words were broadcast live across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, alien civilians heard their representatives acknowledge what many had suspected for months. Their governments had been wrong about humanity. The other delegates followed her example. One by one, the proud alien species that had dismissed humanity admitted their mistakes and asked for forgiveness. When the apologies were finished, President Cho nodded formally. "Humanity accepts your apology and agrees to resume cooperation under the terms discussed." But she was not finished. "However, this cooperation will be gradual. Medical aid will resume immediately for humanitarian reasons. Technical assistance will follow as treaty compliance is verified. Full partnership will be restored when trust is rebuilt." Young Mai Lim, a human historian, watched the ceremony with fascination. She was documenting the moment when the galaxy council formally acknowledged that humanity deserved respect rather than tolerance. The meeting continued for hours as specific terms were negotiated. Humans would return to council space as equals, not supplicants. Alien species would work to repair the damage their pride had caused. A new galactic civilization would be built on mutual respect rather than hierarchy. As the session ended, Captain Sungwoo Han received orders from Earth Command. Limited humanitarian aid would begin immediately, even before the treaties were signed. It was a gesture of good faith that demonstrated human strength through generosity. That evening, Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station and watched the alien ships preparing to depart. They carried hope back to their dying worlds, but also a new understanding of their place in the galaxy. "Do you think they've really learned their lesson?" asked President Cho, joining him at the window. "Some have," Hyun-woo replied.